Shabbos. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that you at home have a talis. Talis is a reminder that 3,000 years ago, when Israelites would just get up and go about their business, dressing themselves, they had probably perhaps only one or two cloaks, one or two garments. And we imagine we surmise it was adult males. And they tied these special fringes to their actual garments of the day. Babylonians and Egyptians and Canaanites didn't do this. Only Israelites did. And symbolically, by weaving a certain special type of fringe into their daily garb, they were demonstrating that they were different. We find out about this in the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers in the Torah. Look at these fringes and remember my mitzvot, God's commandments. So as the centuries have rolled on by and then clothing styles changed and we were no longer wearing rectangular garments, we invented an artificial rectangular garment, which is called a talis. Talis is a Hebrew word. It means a garment. It doesn't say anything about prayer. It means a garment. So we have this artificial and innovated item because we want to remember daily what it means to have mitzvot in our lives. I hope you have a talis, and if you don't have a talis and you're interested in getting one, just contact me and I can help you. And of course, nowadays, males and females over the age of bat and bar mitzvah wear a talis. The blessing is lehita teif b'tzitzit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehita teif b'tzitzit. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai dai yai dai dai yai dai dai dai. You know the words. Yai dai 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 yai dai dai dai. Last time, that's the intro. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai dai dai. New part. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Again. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. It's easy. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Beginning. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai dai yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. When you sing a melody without any words, it's called in Hebrew nigun, in Yiddish nigun. It means a melody. Let's just sing a little bit. And now we're ready to start davening. We're on page 103. If you have the siddur, the early morning blessings. I was walking the shul this morning, and I heard a woodpecker. And I said to myself, that's kind of cool, a woodpecker. This first opening blessing, which speaks of birds, reminds me to appreciate birds. That's actually how we begin our morning prayers, by thinking about birds in the world. If so able, you're invited to rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech v'bina lahavchin ben yom u'ben layla. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani b'tzalmo. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani ben chorin. Amen. If you don't know the words, you can just say Amen at the end of each blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Top of page 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kifufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asa li kol tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tif'ara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein lo yoif koach. Unenu yom v'chol yom lachenu chesed rachamim b'nechel v'nechorei v'timlech chasim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai G'melech Shemo Yisrael. And now we turn to page 112. It's the Psalm for Shabbat in the siddur. Remembering that there are 150 Tehillim, Psalms in the Bible, and about 70 or 75 are used, I should say, or integrated within the Jewish prayer system. Some every day, some only on Shabbos, some on certain Jewish holidays, about 70 to 75. By the way, did you know that originally the 23rd Psalm, which many people are familiar with, was liturgically used by Jews near the late end of Shabbos afternoon? Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of darkness, I will fear no evil. God has placed a table before me and set it before me. That theme is the end of Shabbos. So we recognize that there are challenges in the world, but we're still confident and hopeful as Jews that God is with us. So the 23rd Psalm originates obviously 3,000 years ago, but in liturgic practice, the 23rd Psalm really makes its mark in Saturday late afternoon singing, study, meditation, hanging out. I don't think it comes into the Jewish funeral consciousness until very, very late. Perhaps as a function of having been translated into English, people are now familiar with Valley of Darkness. And they say, oh, that sounds like death. And so they started saying it. Maybe as recently as just the past 200 or 300 years. So I point that out because different psalms have different resonances within our Jewish experience. This psalm is associated with Shabbos. And it's on page 112, the Hebrew. And now you know a melody. Tov lehodot, tov lehodot, lehodot, ladonai, ladonai, ulezamer, l'shimcha elyon. Tov lehodot, tov lehodot, lehodot, ladonai, ladonai, ulezamer, l'shimcha elyon. Lahagid baboker chastecha vemunatcha balelot. Lahagid baboker chastecha vemunatcha balelot. Yadadai dai dai yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 dai. It is good to thank you, Adonai. It is good to sing to your name most high, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. Finger the lute, pluck the harp, let the sound of the lyre rise up. You, O God, gladdened me with your deeds, Adonai. I shall sing of your handiwork, O God. How wonderful are your works, Adonai, how subtle your designs. The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms, only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high and anointed my head with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The last two stanzas, the Hebrew and the English. Tzadik katamar yifrach kerez balvanon yiska shitulim bevet Adonai bechatrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenovon beseva tishenim verananim yiyu lehagid ki ashar Adonai tsuri v'lo avlatavo. And now on page 122, Baruch Shamar, blessed are you, God, for you spoke and the world came into being. It's a challenge every day when you are beginning our day, because this is at the very beginning of our morning wake up time frame. To us, God spoke and the world came into being. When you and I speak, we have an opportunity to create something as well. What shall we create? A world of respect and honor and esteem and courtesy? Or shall the words that come forth from our mouths be words spoken by bullies and selfish and cynical and unfeeling people? Which world are you and I going to make every single morning? The choice is ours. Baruch Shamar v'haya ha'olam Baruch hu Baruch oseh v'reshit Baruch omer v'oseh Baruch gozer Umekayim Baruch merachem al haaretz Baruch merachem al habriot Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireov Baruch chai la'ad v'kayom la'netzach Baruch podeh u'matzil Baruch Shemo. On the English, the singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch Atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yachid Chayol Olamim Melech Mishbachim Fawar Adei At Shemo Gadol Baruch Atah Adonai melch malo tishbachot. In a moment, we turn now to page 136 for the Ashrei. On the Ashrei, as we've mentioned before, it's an alphabetical acrostic, which is a feature of a certain style of creative composition. And we're singing from the opening down to Ve'ezuz. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yalucha selah. Ashrei ha'am shekachalo, Ashrei ha'am sharonoi Elohav. Tila leDavid, aromim chalohai ha'melech, va'avarcha shimcha le'olam voed. B'chol yom avarchecha, va'ahalala shimcha le'olam voed. Gadol Adonai u'malol me'od, v'lig dulato ein cheker. Dor ledor yishabach masecha, v'gavurotecha yagidu, hadar kavod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha, ve'ezuz nor otecha yomeru, v'gadulatecha asapreno. Near the bottom. Tilat Adonai yidaber pi, v'vorech kavasar shem gachalam boed. V'anachnu nevarech Yah me'atav yad olam. Hallelujah. And at the top of page 141, it's the concluding psalm for this section of the service. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Hallelujah, 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 El Bekodsho, hallelujah, hallelujah, Bekia Uzol. Hallelujah, 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 Vig Vorotav. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Karov Gulon. Hallelujah, 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 B'Teka Shofar. Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'Nevel B'Chinor. Hallelujah, 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 B'Tof Omachol. Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'Minim Ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 B'Tzil Tzilei Shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'Tzil Tzilei Trua. Kol Hanshamate Hallelujah, Kol Hanshamate Hallelujah, Kol Hanshamate Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Kol Hanshamate Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. And now we're on page 142 with a very small little paragraph, a small stanza on 142 from a section of the Bible that many people are not familiar with. It's in the center of page 142, and we'll be looking at it on the English side. You see a section known as Chronicles, and then at the very bottom you see the book of Nehemiah. Chronicles and Nehemiah are the last two books in the Hebrew Bible, placed there in terms of sequence. So when we have here on this page 142, is we actually have a little bit of a sampling of, by the way, folks, if you were studying the entire Bible, you'd be in the last two books. Kind of a way of dipping our toes into the water of books of the Bible that most Jews never encounter. But I'm looking at the very small stanza in the center of the page. You, Adonai, are God. It was you who chose Abram, took him out of Ur of the Chaldees, changed his name to Abraham, and found him faithful. And that plays off of the theme in the book of Breshit, the book of Genesis, wherein God changes name of Avram to Avraham, or Abram to Abraham. We're descended from Abraham. We're descended from a man whose name was changed. Come to think of it, we're also descended from a man named Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, or Yisrael in Hebrew. How often do you and I pause to think that God is a part of our names? I find that very comforting, that God's as close to me as my own name. You and I have a shared name, the name Yisrael, descended from Avraham. And God has written God's own wording into our names. And now we turn to Nishmat on page 145. It's a poem. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu v'ruach kol basar tefarech. Our eyes shine like the sun and the moon. Our arms can spread heavenward like eagle's wings. Our feet could be as swift as deer, and yet we would still be unable to fully express our gratitude to you, Adonai, our God, for you are our God and the God of our ancestors. Shochanad on page 147. Shochanad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv rananu tzadikim baranoi l'yishurim novatela b'fi yishurim titalal uv'divrei tzadikim titbarach uv'shon chasidim titromam uv'kerev kiddushim titkadash uv'makhalot rivavot amcha bet Yisrael. David ben Yishai, Avdacha Meshichecha, Yishtabach, the top of page 148. Yishtabach Shimcha, Lo'an Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech, HaGadol VaHaKadosh, Bashamayim u'Ba'aretz. Ki lecha na'e Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloi avoteinu v'imotenu Shir u'shvacha Halel v'zimra Ozu memshala Netzach gedula u'gevura Tila v'tiferet Kedusha u'malchut Brachot v'orot metaver olam Baruch Adonai El Malgalavatish Bachot El Odot Adonai Niflot Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Melech Elchei Olamim. We imagine that we have a minyan beyond walls. Kaddish requires a minyan. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabo. Amen. Be'alma divrach yirtei v'mechachotei. B'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayerecho beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvisman karif v'imero. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabba, Mevarach L'olam Olmayom. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitram v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh, v'yitalal shmei kedusha brechu, leila min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran ba'alma v'imro, Amen. If so able, please rise. Baruch Hu on page 149 and 150. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai Baruch L'olam Voed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Yotzer Or Vorech Hoshech Hoseh Shalom Uvarei Hakol. The English side, the top of page 150. Baruch Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. You're welcome to be seated. Creation of light, creation of darkness, the entire universe. If you look at page 153, you see a poem, and within the center of the poem is a famous phrase, "Holy, holy, holy is Adonai Tzvaot, the whole world is filled with God's glory. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Mlo Chol Kvodo." This is based upon a vision that the prophet Isaiah had in his own experience. He saw angels filling the universe, flashing across the heavens, glowing and sparkling and cavorting and cascading, and wings were extended. They were bright and they were sparkling, and they were shouting out, "God is cool, God is fantastic, God is neat, God is terrific." In Isaiah's vocabulary, kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. And someone thought that poem, that element was very exciting, so we crafted a poem, and it came into this place. Why? Because we're talking about creation, but more than just the physicality of the universe, also the symbolic and the spiritual aspect of creation and reality. And that's why this little poem here on page 153 presents angels. And now we turn to page 154, preparing for the Shema, the first paragraph on the English side. You have loved us deeply, Adonai, our God, and showered us with boundless compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you and to whom you taught the laws of life, so may you be gracious to us and instruct us. Kind Creator, have compassion for us. Open our hearts so that we may understand and with love discern, hear, and study. Observe, perform, and fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. We need to live our lives, our Jewish lives, with the spirit of love, observing Shabbat and keeping aspects of kosher wherever you are on the spectrum of keeping kosher, and remembering Jewish holidays, and fulfilling daily behaviors, prayer, interactions with each other, interactions with the people of the world. All those elements of Jewish life have to be brought forth with love and respect. Gathering the four corners of the tallis together. The bottom stanza on page 154. V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu komemiyot le'artzenu ki el poel Yeshuot ata uvanu v'acharta mikolam v'lashon v'keravtanu l'shimcha hagadol selah bemet lahodot lecha ol yachercha ba'ahava Baruch atah Adonai Habocher b'mo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema on page 155. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayo hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shachbecha v'kumecha ukishartam laot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beninecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'sharecha. The middle of page 156, the third paragraph, which is the Vayomer. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta lehem v'yasu lehem tzitzit al kanfei v'gidayim l'dorotam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf p'tiot achelet v'yalachem letzitzit Uritamoto, uschartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, vasitem otam. Lo taturo acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, laman tizkeru, vasitem et kol mitzvotai. V'yitem kedushim le'Elohechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. The center of page 157 on the English side of the page. Right in the center, a little red arrow. Truly, you are Adonai, our God, and the God of our ancestors, our sovereign and our ancestors' sovereign, our Redeemer and our ancestors' Redeemer. You are our Creator and the rock of our deliverance, our Redeemer and help. So you are known throughout time. There is no God but you. Only Adonai is God. And in fact, you know that phrase from the very last thing we do on Yom Kippur before we're about to eat. We say Adonai Hu Elohim. God is God. Adonai is God's name, and Elohim is the word for God. God is God, no one else. On page 158, Mi Chamocha. Mi Chamocha Poelim Adonai Mi Kamocha Nedar Bakodesh Norati Lot Osefelem Shira Chadasha Shibchu Geulim L'Shimcha Al Sefat Hayam Yachad Kulam Hodu V'Michu V'Yamro Adonai Yimloch La'olam Va'ed Sur Yisrael Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael Uvadei Chinumecha Yehuda V'Yisrael Go Aleinu Adonai Tzivot Shemo Kiddush Yisrael. We begin aloud on page 159 and 160, and thereafter we continue in silence until 161. 66, you remember that we're practicing our 3 small steps. Just 3 small little steps, half steps, quarter steps. We say Adonai, Sifatai, Tiftach. Going forward, Ufi, Yagid, Tehilatecha. We'll try it once more. Practice the words with me. Adonai, Sifatai, Tiftach, Ufi, Yagid, Tehilatecha. We do that in a whisper. That's the silent private part. That's the individual meditative preparation for the collective prayer. So we begin in just a whisper, those 6 little words. Then we begin aloud, and then we continue in silence. So it's whisper, aloud collective, and then silent private. Please rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Vanara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot Umevi Goel Livnei V'Nehem L'man Shemo B'Yava Melech Ozer Ufokenu Moshiach Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ufoket Sarah Atagi Bor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Meitim Ata Rav L'Hoshia Mashiv Ruach Murit Hagashem Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayei Meitim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verofech Olim O Matir Asurim O Mekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Micha Mocha Baal Gevorot Omed Melach Melech Meimit Umechaye Umatmiach Yeshua V'ne'emonat halachayot meitim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei hameitim. And now the full Kaddish on page 167. Full Kaddish is on page 167. Yitkara v'yitkarash shemei rabo. Amen. Be'alma divrach yutei mukmatei b'chashvim ru. Amen. Yehei shemei rabo mavarach. Olam l'yolmei almaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v't'man v'yinaseh v'yidadar v'yidaleh v'yidalach shmei d'kudashah Brichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tishberchata v'nechamata da'ami ran ba'alma v'imero. Amen. Titkabel tzloton v'ton d'chol yisra kadam avon di v'shmai v'imero. Amen. Yehei shlom shmai v'imero. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav. O Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imro Amen
Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imro Amen. And now we turn to the Torah service on page 168. In a moment, we'll be opening the ark to take the Torah out. And as we mentioned before, we don't have a minyan in person, and so we still read a bit of Torah. We do not call up people for aliyot, but we do take the Torah out. So please rise. The ark is opened on page 168. Vayehi bin so Aharon vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai ve'yafotzu evecham ve'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah ki mitzion Tetzei Torah, Odavar Adonai, Miroshalayim, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, La'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato. In the siddur, it's on page 171. Dave and I will sing the Shema, and then please reply with the Shema. Then Dave and I will sing the Echad, and then please reply, and then Dave will take the Torah out to the congregation. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonai Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Kirama Shmo Yachdav. Adonai Hagedul Hagavora Vatiferet Ve'anetzach Ve'hod Kichol Bashamayim Uvaretz Kichol Bashamayim Uvaretz Adonai Hamam Lachab V'minaseh L'chol Rosh Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavim Le'Adam Aglav Kadosh Lu Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavim Le'ahar kodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Thank you, David. We are in Parshat Va'era, and the Torah reading in a moment will be chapter 7 in Exodus, but I want to start somewhere else just briefly, just for a moment. It's not actually our Torah reading for the week, but it bears a bit of study. So it's page 3 352, 352. Page 352 in the Chumash, if you have the Chumash. Otherwise, it's the book of Exodus, chapter number 6. Exodus chapter 6, if you have a Tanakh or a Chumash. This is the scene wherein Moses is preparing to step forward an audience before Paro. Paro is the Hebrew, which is transliterated into English and becomes Pharaoh. Paro is probably not the name. Paro is probably a title. We would say king or czar or Caesar. That's Paro. So Moshe is about to speak to Paro, and we are now on page 352, chapter 6, verse number 6. And God says to Moses, tell the people of Israel the following, and then in a moment you'll be going before Paro. L'chein amor livnei Israel, tell the people of Israel, I am God, v'hotzeti. Literally, I will take you out from the sufferings of Egypt. V'hitzalti, I will rescue you from their enslavements. V'ga'alti etchem, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. Verse 7, v'lakachti, and I will take you to be, for me, a nation, and you will be God. V'hotzeti, v'hitzalti, v'ga'alti, v'lakachti. I will take you out, I will redeem, I will rescue, and I will take you. 4 different verbs. It's these 4 verbs that propel us during the Seder to have 4 glasses of wine. Each one of those 4 glasses of wine on Pesach during our first 2 nights, which are Seder nights, is a promise. So when we lift our glasses of wine scattered throughout the Seder meal, and we do so 4 times with 4 Baruch Atah Borei Pei Guffins, we're actually calling to mind this scene, which is the setting the stage of the first encounter, where you'll see in a moment Aaron and Moses are standing there and they throw down Aaron's walking staff and it turns into a serpent. So these 4 words are setting the stage. There are 4 promises. I want you to think about these promises. I will take you out, I will rescue, I will redeem, and I'll take you to be for me. This is from God's point of view. I'll take you out, I'll rescue, I'll redeem you, and I'll take you. And so these 4 verbs get us out of Egypt. So now we're in the wilderness. Now what? It's like leaving passport control and you've left baggage claim. You're standing outside the baggage claim, and now what? Aha. And now, if you look at verse number 8, the first verb, the first word in Hebrew is veheveti, which means I will bring you to the land, and this refers to the promised land. I'll bring you to the land of Israel, which I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's that 5th promise, which is the message of eventually getting into a new place where you will be free. And that means you'll have to work. Freedom doesn't come for free. Freedom and liberty mean you have to work and ensure your society. Your society is a society of law and justice. And that's becoming ever more apparent to we Americans in these hours before the inauguration, these days and weeks since the election and all the controversy, and so many people are saying that the election was fake, which of course is illegitimate. It's a rejection of law. Freedom means that you've got to work to be a free society. It's that 5th verb that is the ultimate presentation of a Jewish value of liberty. And where's the 5th verb epitomized or brought into tangible expression? It's the cup of Elijah, and that's in the center of the Passover Seder. So the 4 cups are for each and every one of us. We're walking out, but the 5th cup is a collective cup. So may it be in our own lives. And now we turn to the Torah reading that's, if you will, scheduled for today. And that's found on page 357. Page 357. It's verses 8 through 13 on the next page. If you have a regular Tanakh, it's chapter 7, verse 8. Chapter 7, verse 8. Chapter 7, verse 8. And this is the passage of the staff being transformed miraculously into a serpent. ויאמר משה ואהרון לאמור כי ידבר אליכם פרעה לאמור תנו לכם מופת ואמרת אל אהרון קח את מטך והשלך לפני פרעה יהיו תנין ויבוא משה ואהרון אל פרעה ויעשו כן כאשר דיבר אדוני וישלח אהרון את מטהו לפני פרעה ולפני עבדיו יהיו תנין ויקרא גם פרעה לחכמים ולמחשבים ויעשו גם הם חרטבי מצרים בלעתיהם כן וישליכו איש מטהו ויהיו תנינים ויבלע מטה אהרון את מטותם וחטא כלי פרעה ולא שמע להם כאשר דיבר אדוני. And what's striking here in this little text, where you saw the movie, of course, Charlton Heston, Yul Brynner, and Aaron has his walking staff and he throws it down and it turns into a snake. And the Egyptian magicians are described just in the passage which I read a moment ago as taking their walking staffs and casting them down, and their staffs turn into serpents too. So where's the power of God? Well, as it's described here, Aaron's walking staff serpent swallows up the other walking staff serpents of the Egyptian magicians. But the other element is that the Egyptian magicians are described as using their latehem, their divinations, their magics, their tricks. Whereas, of course, Aaron and Moses don't resort to any tricks. They just stand there. So that's the power of God. But already we see that Pharaoh is not interested in listening, in noticing, in accepting the possibility that there's something greater than he himself. And the rest of this week's Parsha, which brings us the first 7 plagues, and then it's next week's Parsha, which brings us the 3 plagues, for a total of 10, are here to demonstrate to Pharaoh the folly of rejecting something greater than himself. The most important element in Jewish tradition is to accept the reality that we are not the end-all and be-all. We are not the end-all and be-all. There is something much greater than ourselves. And the question for you and me is how do you and I access and interact with that which is greater than ourselves? And Judaism says, give it a name, and that's Adonai, which means my God, and establish a relationship. How do we do that? With all kinds of special behaviors and activities, and also prayer and Torah study, and most importantly, being part of a community. And while temporarily we are away from ourselves physically, we're still a community. That's Judaism in a nutshell. And now, just 2 words about the Haftorah, which is on page 370 and 372 in the Chumash. If you have the Tanakh, it's Ezekiel chapter 29 of Ezekiel. Ezekiel is living 700 years after Moses, 700 years after the 10 plagues, 7 centuries after the Exodus. Ezekiel living in the time period when Babylonia is becoming ever more aggressive and assertive, and Babylonia attacks and besieges Jerusalem, and eventually the first temple is destroyed. And during those time periods, those very, very terrifying experiences of an army's besieging the capital and then attacking its most cherished building within the capital, can you and I identify with that? That's Tisha B'Av and the destruction of the first temple. During that whole sequence of time and the tension that's leading up to it, there are some people pressuring Jews to make an alliance with Egypt, and the alliance with Egypt will bolster Israel, and maybe Babylonia won't attack. And there are other Jews that are saying, no, we're not going to do that. Our history with Egypt is checkered, but we're not going to do that. And ultimately, of course, the temple is destroyed. But Ezekiel is responding to this theme of Egypt. And he says, it's verse number 3 of chapter 29, I'm going to deal with you, O Pharaoh, king of Egypt. You call yourself a mighty monster. You see yourself as saying, Ezekiel's words, you, O Pharaoh, see yourself as saying, the Nile is my own. I made the Nile River for myself. And again, that's playing off of what we have here within the Torah reading, the theme that Pharaoh rejects the reality of God, that Pharaoh sees himself as the ultimate. That's what Ezekiel's playing off of, but not specific to Pharaoh, because Ezekiel's speaking about Egypt in his own day. That's the challenge of this Haftorah, to leapfrog back and forth, pun intended, frog, right? That's the next blade, between the Haftorah theme based upon the element in the Torah, but the Haftorah is speaking of reality of its own experience. And now, our Mishaber, the prayer for healing. If you know someone who is ill, I ask that you mention a person's name at this time. Mishaber Chatenu Avzim Chatenu Sorah Kurach Avleyahu Rekrapet Chacholim Haylev Shekolel Et Sora Liba Bat Enya Lynn Hillman Zorach Ben Leah Mickey Bat Cecilia Elalea Bat Aviva Velho Ben Herschel Monica Knight Yudah Moshe Ben Rivka Mordechai Ben Zelda George Patinos Murray Bradwell Pat Cockrell Wendy Pfeiffer, Debbie Pfeiffer, Tom Bastoni, Yaakov Roman Chana, Avi Moshe Ben Mendel, Malchi Tzedek Ben Bracha, Shoshana Bat Mili, Shivagitl Bat Rivka, Shoshana Bat Ima, Hanasara Bat Peshalea, Arvir Ben Gisha, Malka Bat Grace, Moshe Ben Fega. V'kolem she'nishkum hayom me'era for shtem v'nishmayim from their shkuf hashta b'kfanwar amen. O God, who has blessed our mothers and our fathers, reach forth and touch with blessing and with reassurance all of our loved ones, those known to us, those mentioned by name, and those unknown to us and still in your eyes, O God, bringing forth renewed healing, renewed health, renewed confidence in the future. May the days ahead be days of healing and growing ever stronger. May the days ahead be a time when people exit the hospital and return to their homes and their lives. May the hours and days ahead be moments wherein doctors and nurses are capable, with their own strength and resolve, of tending all of our loved ones with love and gentleness and compassion. May all in need of healing so receive these blessings. And we all say, Amen. At this moment, these past 1, 2, 3 hours or so today, as you know, here in Mobile, there's been an increasing rollout of the vaccine, and more people today are going down to the cruise terminal. And we offer a prayer of gratitude for the vaccine that is here in our community, And as we say this prayer, we also seek the efficiency and the wisdom of our local and county and state leaders to be expanded so that more people can quickly receive the vaccine. Almighty God, watch over all the health caregivers and workers who are putting themselves in potential elements of risk and jeopardy that the greater community might be healthier and safer. Give them strength in their challenges placed before them to bring forth a caring and compassionate delivery of this vaccine. Bless them all and bless all those who are stepping forward to receive the vaccine. May more vaccine be available soon, quickly for us and in every locale throughout America and throughout the world. And we all say Amen. And for those of you who are receiving the vaccine or have recently received the vaccine, I ask you, please say the Shehechianu, which is a blessing that speaks of life and of coming to this special moment. And when you get your second vaccine, say the Shehechianu again. And if you have not yet said the Shehechianu, but you've had your vaccine, say it with me now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lasman hazeh. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has kept us in life, preserved us, and brought us to this special occasion. And now you can see how appropriate it is to say the Shehechianu upon receiving the vaccines. The Torah is lifted. We thank David for stepping forth for Hagma. V'zot Torah asher sam Moshe Livnei Bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. And as for putting the Torah away, it occurs to me that we haven't sung a certain psalm in a while. So we need to just remind ourselves of this psalm. It's Mizmor David. Mizmor LeDavid, Havul Adonai Pnei Elim, Havul Adonai Kavod Oz, Havul Adonai Kavod Shemo, Hishtachavul Adonai Vadrat Kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim el kavod hirim Adonai al mayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai be'adar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vayshaber Adonai et arzei halvanon. Vayirkidem kamo egel Lebanon v'siryon kamo ben reimim. Kol Adonai chotzev lavot eish, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yachol el ayolot, Vayechesof ya'arot, uvehechalo kolo omer kavod. Adonai lamabul yashav, Yeshev Adonai melech leolam. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. The top of page 184, it's the last three lines. Eitz chayim hi lama chazikim ba v'tom cheha meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. Shkoyach, David. Remain standing, please. Pardon me. The Aleinu in a moment on page 205. Page 205. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asana kugo yeharatzot velo samanu kimishpachot adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem v'goraleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei amlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yosei haaretz umoshav yekaro b'shamayim mimal ushchinatu zo begavei meromim hu Eloheinu ein od Malkeinu efes ulatom kakatu b'torato v'yodata yom v'shevota elavavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim b'shamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachot ein od. Enon. Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu, yiyeh Adonai echad, U'shemo echad. The mourner's Kaddish will be on page 207. If you are remembering a loved one and you wish to mention that person's name in your own home aloud, it's appropriate to do so at this time. And we here in the shul remember Jacob Frisch, Joseph Bernstein Jr., Leonard Marcus, Nathan Mishloff, Louis Leibowitz, Gustav Fuchs, Nathan Jaffa, Eva Siegel, Mark Kay, Celia Gerhart Reed, Rebecca Seidel, Jack Inton, Jacob Weinstein, Dora Briskman, Ida Seidel. And recently, our shul has suffered loss. Gersh Kukla, Jerry Olinsky, Ronnie Hoffman, And members of the temple just lost Jan Friedlander. Kaddish is on page 207. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba. Amen. Be'olma divra chir ute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye techol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'meru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivarach lo'olam ololmei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei tekudusha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alma v'meru. Amen. Yehei shaloma rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'meru. Amen. May God bring healing. May all your loved ones who are ill and are suffering, not only physically, but emotionally, be sustained. May all those who have died be held up in bracha and in kedusha, blessing and holiness. And may we soon be able to come back in group company so we can stand next to each other when we're in need. That's, I think, my deepest prayer, that we can come back soon in company so we can stand next to each other. We'll conclude in just a moment with the Adon Olam on page 211, and then Kiddush and Hamotzi, and hope that you have a glass of wine, a piece of bread nearby. A reminder that tonight we have Havdalah on Zoom at 7. We're excited about that. Religious school, of course, is tomorrow on Zoom. Monday, the shul office is closed, but we will be meeting for Tanakh on Zoom. And Monday at 5:30, story time for the toddlers on Zoom as well. And Tuesday's Zoom spirit topic is sharing thoughts of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Adon Olam is on page 211. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'ed nasa v'chepsa kol azai melech shemo nikra azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimlok nora v'hu aya v'hu oveh v'oyeh b'tifara v'oyeh b'tifara v'hu echad v'yein sheni laham shelo lahach birab b'li reshit b'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzur chevli b'yet sarab v'onisi omanosli menat kosi b'yom mekra menat kosi b'yom mekra b'yado afkid ruchi b'et ishan v'ya'irab v'imrochi gaveyati Adonai li v'lo ira Adonai li v'lo ira. And now Kiddush and then Hamotzi. V'shamero b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam brit olam Beini ovein b'nei Yisrael Oti li'olam Ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz uvayom hashvi Shabbat v'inafash Al ken berachanot yom HaShabbat v'ikacheu sabre Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Borei peri hagafen. It's 11:15, and I know it's spur of the moment, but if some of you are still on screen, I'd love to see you drop by the shul, wear a mask. It's a pretty day. Let's sit outside for a little bit like we did last week. We'll sing a little bit. We'll pray just a little bit, wearing masks under the front portico. From 11:30 to 12:30, just stop on by. Love to see you. Love to visit with you for a little bit. And don't forget, tomorrow, Krispy Kreme donut time. Today, no donuts, just a little bit of songing and schmoozing. But tomorrow, 10:30 to 11:30, Krispy Kreme donuts. Hamotzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Until we see each other again, on screen, in person, speaking on the phone, may you be blessed with Shabbos. May you know how much you are loved by me and by our shul and by God. May you have peace.